Aquí andamos ir en Europa, no, oiga, ya aquí andamos encargados. Nomás para ver si va a estar con nosotros o no, pues le mandamos el mensaje que se acomode con nosotros o se acomode bien con ellos, porque los vergas van bien. Aquí estamos en los bandos, para que sepa nomás. Y no me esconda.
In the shadows left behind by fallen empires, new figures emerge. When the name 𝐿𝐻𝐿, born Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, became synonymous with the brutal expansion of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, Mexico entered one of the bloodiest chapters in its modern criminal history. But power in the underworld is never permanent. Arrests, betrayals, fractures, and relentless pressure from the Mexican state and the United States gradually weakened the myth of invincibility surrounding the cartel's leadership. And in that vacuum, a new name began circulating in encrypted messages, whispered in rural towns, and scrawled in narco banners hung from overpasses: 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿. This is not just a story of one man rising. It is a story of how cartels evolve, how violence reshapes itself, and how a new generation learns from the old, sometimes becoming even more dangerous in the process.
Aquí andamos ir en Europa, no, oiga, ya aquí andamos encargados. Nomás para ver si va a estar con nosotros o no, pues le mandamos el mensaje que se acomode con nosotros o se acomode bien con ellos, porque los vergas van bien. Aquí estamos en los bandos, para que sepa nomás. Y no me esconda, para que vea.
Así comienza el video atribuido.
When 𝐿𝐻𝐿 consolidated power in the early 2010s, CJNG distinguished itself through calculated brutality and rapid territorial expansion. Unlike older organizations such as the Sinaloa cartel, which relied heavily on long-standing smuggling corridors and political alliances, CJNG built its empire through aggressive military-style offensives. They used social media for propaganda, staged public displays of force, and recruited heavily from former police and soldiers. But power, built on fear, carries its own weaknesses. By the early 2020s, international law enforcement agencies tightened financial tracking systems. The U.S. Treasury Department targeted shell companies. Mexican security forces intensified operations in Jalisco, Michoacán, and Guanajuato. Internal fractures began to show. Regional commanders operated more independently. Profits from synthetic drugs, especially fentanyl, became both a blessing and a curse, attracting greater scrutiny than ever before. The legend of 𝐿𝐻𝐿 began to shift. Whether through illness, strategic retreat, or mounting pressure, his presence became less visible. The myth remained, but myths can only govern so long without a visible hand guiding them. Into this uncertainty stepped 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿. Little is publicly known about his real identity. Some reports describe him as a former logistics coordinator within CJNG, a man who understood supply chains better than battlefields. Others claim he rose through the enforcement wing before transitioning into financial management. What is clear is that his approach marked a strategic departure from the spectacle-driven violence that defined CJNG's rise. Where 𝐿𝐻𝐿 ruled through open confrontation, 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿 reportedly preferred quiet consolidation. The first signs of his influence were subtle. Rather than launching massive public offensives, rival cells found their funding disrupted. Independent traffickers were absorbed into a more centralized distribution system. Small-time operators who once paid multiple cartels for protection suddenly found that only one organization controlled access to precursor chemicals needed for methamphetamine production. This shift mattered. Synthetic drugs no longer required sprawling rural plantations. Instead, they depended on chemical supply routes, access to ports, and industrial infrastructure. Control the chemicals, and you control the product. Ports along Mexico's Pacific coast became critical. Smuggling networks linked not just to the United States, but to Europe and Asia. Intelligence suggested that 𝐿𝐻𝐻𝐿 focused heavily on financial laundering, cryptocurrency, legitimate businesses, cross-border trade schemes. Violence did not disappear, but it became targeted rather than theatrical. Communities noticed the difference. Public shootouts decreased in some regions, but disappearances rose quietly. Rivals did not leave bodies in the streets. They simply vanished. This was evolution. to understand 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐾's rise, one must understand generational change within cartels. The first generation of major Mexican traffickers built power around marijuana and cocaine routes in the 1980s and 1990s. The second generation militarized operations in response to the government's war on drugs. The third generation, 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐾's generation, came of age in a digital world. Encrypted messaging apps replaced radio chatter. Drones monitored rival territories. Cryptocurrency wallets replaced stacks of cash in hidden basements. Recruitment videos circulated on TikTok-like platforms, presenting cartel life as lucrative and glamorous. Under this model, leadership required less public myth and more operational sophistication. Analysts believe 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐾 recognized that extreme violence, while effective for expansion, attracted international backlash. By reducing high-profile massacres and focusing on financial invisibility, he may have aimed to preserve long-term stability. Not peace, but predictability.
Yeah, prosecutors say this case centers on enormous amounts of fentanyl, cocaine, and meth flowing into the United States through San Diego, and they're offering millions of dollars for any tips that help bring him to justice.
These charges reflect the devastating harm inflicted on communities on both sides of the border through violence, addiction, and intimidation.
Federal prosecutors announced a new indictment against
control the Baja corridor for drug trafficking from Baja California, Tijuana, into the United States. So these two are very high-level targets.
Investigators say under their watch, thousands of kilograms of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and cocaine crossed into San Diego.
There's enough fentanyl that's been brought in by 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿 to kill everybody in San Diego 4 times. So, I mean, it's a massive amount of drugs that are brought into San Diego.
The new indictment charges 𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐿 with narco-terrorism, material support of terrorism, continuing criminal enterprise, and money laundering. Charges made possible after the cartel was designated a foreign terrorist organization last year.
The violence doesn't know borders. The drugs don't know borders. They're getting into our communities, they're impacting our families, and they're really influencing our everyday life in a negative way.
Yet, consolidation never happens without resistance. As 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐾 strengthened his internal grip, rival organizations saw opportunity. The Sinaloa cartel, long a dominant force, remained fragmented after the arrest of figures like Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. New leaders competed for influence. Border cities became contested terrain once again. Localized wars flared in states like Zacatecas and Colima. Roadblocks, armored vehicles, improvised explosive devices. These tactics signaled that despite strategic restraint, large-scale violence was still part of the equation when necessary. The difference was that 𝐬𝐻𝐾 allegedly delegated more autonomy to regional commanders. Instead of centralized micromanagement, he offered incentives, profit sharing, logistical support, protection networks, loyalty through opportunity rather than fear alone. This model made fragmentation less likely but created another risk ambition. When power spreads horizontally, betrayal can come from within. Internationally, fentanyl reshaped everything. Unlike cocaine, which relies on Andean cultivation, fentanyl production depends on chemical expertise and supply chains. It is cheaper, more potent, and deadlier. The opioid crisis in the United States intensified political pressure. American agencies expanded cooperation with Mexico, deploying surveillance technology and financial sanctions at unprecedented levels.
Was a very, very effective takedown of one of the biggest leaders, and it was done, based on the intelligence that they conducted primarily.
Mexico's defense minister became emotional as he honored the 25 National Guard members killed in Operation Sunday. Direct U.S. involvement in the operation, but acknowledged the Americans did provide intelligence. U.S. President Donald Trump has previously threatened military strikes inside Mexico targeting cartels. And
the Mexican government decides to act when it's under unprecedented levels of pressure from the Trump administration to crack down on the cartels.
The fear now is that violence may continue to spiral as cartel members fight for power and battle for territory.
There are three people who are going to compete to become the new leader of the cartel, and the political protection will go on.
While experts warn the death of 𝐬𝐻𝐻 alone will do little to disrupt Mexico's sprawling narco empires.
It is a very superficial way to attack the cartels and doesn't speak to a sort of more profound, deep extraction of their roots that are so deeply embedded in Mexico.
Facing unprecedented violence, it's now a question of whether Mexican officials want to go deeper or if the cartels are too rich and too powerful to truly be disrupted. Jack.
Under 𝐬𝐻𝐻's alleged leadership, CJNG affiliates reportedly diversified. They expanded into fuel theft, illegal mining, extortion of agricultural industries, and control of migrant smuggling routes. Diversification insulated profits from the volatility of drug markets. Communities caught in these territories faced a complicated reality. In some areas, cartel operatives enforced local order settling disputes, punishing thieves, providing limited social aid. In others, they imposed ruthless extortion schemes on farmers, avocado producers, and small businesses. Cartels have always operated as shadow states. 𝐬𝐻𝐻 appeared to refine that model less flamboyant than 𝐬𝐻𝐻, but perhaps more systematized. Yet, the myth of 𝐬𝐻𝐻 remains contested. Some security experts question whether he is a single individual at all. Could 𝐬𝐻𝐻 be a brand, an internal codename, representing collective leadership? Cartels have historically used aliases strategically, sometimes to misdirect law enforcement. But symbolism matters. In the underworld, perception can be as powerful as bullets. Narco corridos began referencing the new name. Social media accounts loyal to CJNG posted cryptic messages celebrating new management and a new era. Whether orchestrated or organic, the messaging suggested a conscious rebranding effort. From spectacle to structure. The broader impact on Mexico is sobering. Despite periodic high-profile arrests, the structural drivers of cartel power remain intact. Poverty, corruption, weak local policing, and insatiable international drug demand. Removing one leader rarely dismantles an organization. It often reshapes it. If 𝐬𝐻𝐻 represented the era of overt militarized expansion, 𝐬𝐻𝐻 may symbolize strategic entrenchment. This evolution challenges traditional enforcement strategies. Decapitation tactics arresting or killing kingpins worked under the assumption that organizations depended heavily on charismatic leaders. But decentralized, financially sophisticated networks can survive leadership loss more effectively. The result is a more elusive adversary. On the ground, fear persists. Families in contested regions still hear gunfire at night. Journalists investigating cartel influence continue to face threats. Politicians navigate complex realities, sometimes negotiating unofficial truces to prevent violence in their municipalities.
For the most part, we've seen a quieter day unfold, but there still have been some notable travel disruptions that really have left people who are trying to leave here from LA to those affected parts of Mexico shaken.
Chaos in some parts of Mexico has led to confusion.
They all had to work today, and well, now they're stuck here. We don't even know what's going on.
Worry for family, for her country, desperation, missing her daughter's wedding.
We're going to cancel we just checked in. We're going to cancel it right now because my daughter said, we love you to be here, but your safety are first priorities.
Just some of the stories.
To go back home, or they have to be here for a few extra days.
Meanwhile, Nor Velasco is back at the airport for a second time today. Her flight home to Guadalajara was canceled abruptly yesterday. She arrived 6 hours early for her flight scheduled for this evening, just to be safe.
Esperemos que todo vuelva a la normalidad.
I hope everything gets back to normal, she says. There are many places, businesses, cars burned.
𝐬𝐻𝐻's rise does not signal the end of bloodshed. It signals adaptation. And adaptation is survival. There is also the human dimension. Behind aliases and headlines are young recruits, often teenagers, drawn by promises of income in areas where legitimate opportunity is scarce. Social media glamorizes weaponry, and luxury lifestyles. Yet many of these recruits do not survive their 20s. Under a more corporate-style structure, recruitment within the cartel has become a highly calculated process, no longer a matter of brute force alone. New members are evaluated, trained, and integrated with precision. Each role, from foot soldiers to logistics coordinators, is carefully assigned, with hierarchies and responsibilities resembling a business more than a street gang. Training programs are designed to maximize efficiency, reduce operational risk, and ensure loyalty, while supply chains and distribution networks operate with a level of sophistication that mirrors legitimate corporations. Cartels evolve, responding to market conditions and pressure from law enforcement, shifting tactics as agilely as any Fortune 500 company adapting to competition. But unlike legal businesses, the currency here is fear. Reputation is power. Loyalty is enforced through violence. And while corporate memos may outline profit targets and quarterly projections, cartels measure success through survival, dominance, and influence. The stakes are existential. Failure is often fatal. The future of 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐷's empire is uncertain, perched on the knife edge of ambition and chaos. Will he maintain the delicate balance of power, or will internal rivalries and personal ambition fracture the organization once more? Will international cooperation, intelligence sharing, and financial crackdowns dismantle the networks faster than they can rebuild? Or will the cycle repeat, with a new leader emerging from the shadows, rising where the last fell, continuing the same pattern of violence, cunning, and ruthless strategy? History suggests that cartels rarely vanish, they transform. They adapt to law enforcement pressure, changing markets, and shifts in public attention. They reinvent themselves in quieter, more strategic ways, often leaving outsiders unaware of just how vast and organized they have become. 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐷's story is still being written in real time. Every decision, every move in the shadowy world of the cartel is influenced by global demand for drugs, local desperation, advances in communication and transportation technology, and the relentless pursuit of profit. The balance between brutality and business acumen defines their longevity.
Well, Jonathan, this cartel really started as a regional force in Mexico, really has grown into one of the most aggressive cartels in the entire country. So much so that investigators say once that cartel feels pushed or cornered, they have a history of striking back and striking back hard.
When there's a fight for who controls turf, there's going to be violence.
Former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense Sergio de la Peña says that's exactly what's happening right now, amphetamines into the United States. From there, the DEA says the cartel expanded quickly, using a mixture of alliances, coercion, and violence to push into key trafficking corridors. DEA analysts describe the cartel structure as decentralized, made up of semi-autonomous cells that can keep operating even after arrests or leadership losses.
They have some type of continuity of operations where they have somebody designated to take over in case the boss is taken out.
And it has certainly happened before. When federal law enforcement in Mexico struck cartel leaders in 2015, in April of that year, suspected CJNG gunmen ambushed a police convoy in Jalisco, killing 15 state police officers there. That same month, during a federal security operation, CJNG gunmen shot down a Mexican military helicopter, an escalation confirmed by the Mexican Defense Ministry.
After the reign of 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐿, the era of spectacle, of high-profile violence, audacious escapes, and headline-grabbing confrontations may be fading. In its place stands something subtler, more methodical, but potentially even more durable. And in that evolution lies the unsettling truth of organized crime. Endings are rarely final. Territories change hands, leaders fall, and headlines fade, but the structures remain. Violence, power, and profit continue to shape the narrative, evolving with the times. In the story of 𝐬𝐻𝐫𝐷, there are no neat conclusions, only transitions, adaptations, and the relentless continuation of an empire that refuses to disappear. The quiet rise of a new era, the subtle shift from spectacle to strategy, underscores a chilling reality. In the world of cartels, survival is never accidental. It is engineered, calculated, and executed with precision. And for those who watch, the story continues, unfolding in real time, each chapter more complex and perilous than the last.